Okay, we'll get going. Good afternoon. I'm Jay Brennan, a councillor in the town of Smith Falls, and a member of the Planning Advisory Committee. I have two of my fellow members here, Jacqueline Grimes and Yvonne Robert. So welcome to you, and welcome everyone else to our statutory public meeting for our new official plan and transportation master plan. I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. On Tuesday, August 25th, 2026, we acknowledged this sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship and being mindful of generations to come. So again, welcome, and I'll just give a little background. The draft official plan and transportation master plan began in 2024 and encompasses the changes from the most recent provincial planning statement. The new official plan focuses on 5 key themes: housing, transportation, sustainability, downtown revitalization, and community spaces. Transportation master plan is the town's first and sets a roadmap to planning our transportation needs over the planning horizon. We have held 2 open houses, World Cafe on October 10th, 2024, and an open house September 10th, 2025, and now this statutory public meeting. And we encourage and appreciate feedback from the public. And I'll just add that I'm really happy to be here to get through one of the final hurdles, and I want to congratulate staff and our planning partners for getting us this far. It's been 2 years, and this is a very important document. So with that, I'll introduce Carl Grinke, our Manager of Development Services, who will introduce the project and its team. Carl?
Thank you, Councillor, and hello, and thank you for coming out to the public meeting. It's been my privilege to guide this project over the last 2 years. The official plan is one of the most impactful public policy documents a municipality can do, and it's intended to put into policy the vision of where we want to be as a community. So the town's current official plan has served us quite well. It's guided us through an intense period of growth over the last 10 years, and we've actually achieved close to the total number of housing starts we were expecting to by 2034, which is why we need to sort of expand that and look further into the planning horizon. So before we went too far in this project, we did a new land needs study, a growth study that forecast that we're going to continue to grow, and the official plan is our opportunity for us to plan where that'll be and what it'll look like. A new official plan allows us to take the many things that are working for well and plan for the next 30 years. It also gives us the opportunity to zero in on what is important to the community today, especially on the housing front, and align with the shifting provincial policy framework that we all work under. The plan is not a document just put together by planners for the use of planners. It helps guide operational capital decisions by council and other town departments. The draft that's being presented this evening has been shaped by other departments, as well as feedback that we've heard from the community. The themes that will be discussed in the presentation were distilled from what we heard from the public. And I'd like to acknowledge Marie Elmsley and Richard Grant in the Planning Division for the work on the plan, and also introduce Cadence, Rory, and Andrea from Dillon Consulting, who we've hired to help us undertake this project. The Dillon team has extensive experience on community planning projects, and have shared their experience to help shape this plan. So without much ado, I'll turn the floor over to Cadence to review the project and launch the public consultation part of this evening. Cadence, if you wanted to go ahead.
Just here. Okay. Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. As was mentioned, I'm Cadence. I'm from Dillon Consulting, if you'd like to flip. Yeah, so I'm just quickly going to talk about the official plan process and the transportation master plan process and how the two of them are integrated. Basically, we had the opportunity to kind of take advantage of the relationship between the two and do these two processes at the same time. And it kind of enabled that 2-for-1 feedback at the open house and the World Cafe event Carl was mentioning. While we're working on the official plan, getting the transportation master plan going at the same time. Sorry. Yeah, can you go back? Sorry. And so basically what that led to is that there were design recommendations that came out that might typically be integrated into a transportation master plan that instead were able to be housed in some of the official plan policy, and just that robust TMP process that was ongoing fed into the transportation section of the OP. Thanks. So in terms of why this process has been ongoing now, there are a couple of key reasons. The first one being just that the existing official plan needed to be modernized. The current one was adopted in 2013, and there have been a lot of changes both in planning policy and also in Smiths Falls since then. So there is a need to regularly update an official plan, and this has been part of the process to comply with that. As I mentioned, addressing some key provincial policy changes that have come about, most notably the new provincial planning statement that was enacted in 2024. And as I was saying, the changing needs of Smiths Falls residents, Smiths Falls businesses, growing population, and need to look at that urban boundary expansion, more housing for people, that sort of thing. And that's kind of what led us, along this process. The next slide has a timeline of how this project has gone. So it's been about 2 years up until this point, as Carl was saying, with the process starting in the fall of 2024. Last September, almost a year ago, we did an open house after the draft was released to the public, at which point we gathered feedback and took the time to revise the plan. We spent a bit more time with the plan just to make sure we were creating something really robust and that Smiths Falls could be proud of, leading to a better final product, official plan, we all think. And so that has gotten us to the point today where we have recently released that revised draft, the official plan, and now we're at the statutory public meeting. After today, there will be some final, pending feedback, opportunity for a few final changes to the official plan, and then it really goes over to council for adoption of the document. So Carl was mentioning the 5 key themes that have guided this planning process. The first one being housing, which I'm sure a lot of you in the room can attest to the fact that this is a big issue in a lot of municipalities in Ontario. And so really looking at providing Smiths Falls with a range of housing options, both in location and also in housing types. So looking at housing opportunities in the new downtown fringe area that's shown on the land use plan, the Lombard Street, Maisie, and Cornelia areas. And really encouraging that mix of housing and some intensification through infill development and kind of adding homes while maintaining existing neighborhood character. The second key theme being transportation, which is really about improving the overall transportation network, which includes the active transportation network and how people get around Smiths Falls. I won't touch on this too much just because Andrea is going to speak to the transportation master plan once I'm done talking. So we'll hear a little bit more about that shortly. The next key theme has to do with sustainability and really promoting responsible development in the Smiths Falls, being aware of things like climate change, wanting to integrate some of the goals of the town's climate action plan into the official plan through practices such as stormwater management and renewable energy. So that's a key theme that comes up throughout the document. The downtown revitalization is another key element of the official plan, considering the downtown's role as a cultural, economic, and social heart of Smiths Falls, and so reinvesting in some of that public space and redeveloping more housing. One of the key changes that I'll also talk about when I put the map up, just the changes in the downtown to have the downtown core and downtown fringe land use designations, and sort of what is allowed in both of those spaces to encourage a bit more residential development in that area. And then also through some of the downtown policies looking to reconnect that area with the canal district that has come to be through the canal, the canal area master plan. And finally, talking about community spaces, really wanting to provide Smith Falls residents with high quality public space and parks is one of the focuses of this official plan. And so there's policies that encourage the enhancement of the park system and interconnectedness of the green spaces throughout Smith Falls. Also tied in is the preservation of cultural heritage throughout the town. Next one. And so this slide shows you the land use plan map, which is also larger on the wall there. I know that's a little bit hard to see. It shows some of the key land use. It shows the land use designations in the town and the specific policy areas. Some of the key changes here that you might note compared to the mapping in the previous official plan, as I mentioned, include the division of the downtown into the downtown core and fringe, the expanded employment area, which would formerly have been called the industrial area, as well as the development of a few new specific policy areas. One of those I mentioned just briefly before, the Canal District, which came to be through the Canal District Master Plan, is a place to enable redevelopment, connecting the downtown to the Rideau Canal, and the idea being that these lands will provide Smith Falls with continuous public waterfront access. And then another major one would be the lands at 361 Queen Street, formerly known as the Rideau Regional Center or Gallipo Center. There are a few key land uses going on in this area, including residential, future development area, and that preserved that Queen Street mixed use designation where the existing heritage buildings are found, and which permits a lot of the same uses as the Uptown mixed use designation. And the intention is to enable this area to be eventually developed as a complete community with some lands identified for residential use and then others set aside for future development. Bearing in mind that the development in this area has to take into account the conservation of the cultural heritage and the heritage attributes on the site. And then just adjacent to that as well is the Lawrence Street area with some lands identified for as part of the urban boundary expansion, which was one of the exercises undertaken through this this whole process, looking at where that urban boundary needs to be expanded to accommodate the growing population. And so some of the lands there are identified for growth and future growth.
Okay.
And yeah, so just
Quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Lawrence Street project and it's purple, and in the legend it says employment. I clarified with Richard. Yes, that employment means commercial. Is that correct?
Sorry, so the employment areas are what would have been formerly known as industrial areas, effectively, but this is expanded. And so what you're, I guess we're looking at two different things here, which is the dotted line around the outside of it is speaking to what's allowed in that area, and then the colors are the designations that apply on top of it. So there's
The designation in the legend says employment.
yes.
What is employment? Is that commercial? Is it business?
It would be like business, like light industrial type of development.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I wanted.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, very quickly, I was going to just talk about what happened
I'll
after
just
this meeting.
I'll just
Yeah.
as part of the format. I mean, well, all the questions you want to answered at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Just let them go. Okay. Thanks. Sorry.
No, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, any feedback that comes in through this meeting will be compiled and documented, and any necessary revisions will happen to the official plan, at which point it will go to council for adoption. And then once that happens, the plan is with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for review and the final decision on its adoption, at which point it becomes the official plan for Smith Falls. And at this point, I'll pass it over to Andrea, who is going to speak to the transportation master plan side of things. And then, yes, then we can do questions on both of them at the same time. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cadence. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Plan. We're following the municipal class environmental assessment process. So we began with phase 1, identifying the problems and opportunities. That was before our last engagement session. So we identified problems with the road network, falling into 4 categories. We have localized improvements. These are things like intersections or small sections of roadway that have small problems that could benefit from improvement. Connectivity, so these are larger network gaps that if we filled them, we could reduce traffic volumes on other corridors, reduce out of the way travel, or just increase your ability to get to other areas of Smiths Falls. And then we have strategic capacity, sections of the road where the projected traffic volumes are going to exceed the current through lane capacity of the existing road network. And then for active transportation problems, the proposed active transportation facilities were actually identified in the Smiths Falls Active Transportation Plan. We just took a look at the big picture to see if these facilities will actually fit into the existing road network. And we identified some areas that we might have a tricky time implementing all of these proposed ideas. So once we identified those, we moved on to phase 2, where we identified alternative solutions, different possible ways to fix these problems. And then we evaluate each alternative, we give each alternative a fair go, and then we select the ones that we think would be the best fit. So we can go to the next slide. Great. So this is a recap of the problems and opportunities that we found. For road operations, we found that Elmsley Street from Cornelia to Beckwith, just that small area to the north, is expected to be at or over capacity by 2046. Lombard from the town boundary to Beckwith is going to be nearing capacity. There's only a small segment between, I believe, Abbott and Alfred that is looking to be at or over capacity. And then on Beckwith Street, just across the bridge, essentially, there's a risk of approaching capacity. And then we identified 5 intersections that could have some operational concerns. Only 2 are over a level of service D, so we grade intersections like a report card. A is great, B is good, C is fine, D is where we start to worry. But for the ones that are level of service D, we typically would recommend monitoring. It doesn't necessarily trigger a need for improvement right away. But Union and Cornelia Street there, about a level of service F, which identifies that we need to find a proper fix to that problem, as well as Elmsley and Cornelia, just the westbound left movement had a level of service E. And then there are 4 spots: Old Slides over the bridge, Cornelia from William to Union, Lombard from Alfred to Abbott, and Beckwith from Lombard to Chambers, where I believe bike lanes are proposed, and the existing right-of-way space likely can't accommodate just putting them in. So we need to figure out whether more land should be acquired or if there's another solution we can come to. And then we just highlighted that those boundary expansion area in the southeast is going to need some more roads when that gets developed, so that we can connect that development into the existing road network. Right, next slide. Sweet. All right, so for each of those problems we identified a number of alternatives. If I went through them all today, we would be here till tomorrow. But generally, the solutions fall into do nothing, which is something that we do genuinely have to consider as an option. Sometimes the cost of doing the improvement just doesn't justify the benefit. So we always consider, well, what would happen if we just didn't fix it? And then we have transportation demand management. This is promoting non-single passenger vehicle use. So things like walking, cycling, transit, if it's an option. Finding ways, instead of expanding the road network, that we can reduce the number of vehicles on the road network. And then we have transportation system management. This is things like signal timing, adding turn lanes, prohibiting turning in certain areas, things that make traffic flow better without necessarily adding lanes or expanding the network. And then when all else fails, there's always infrastructure enhancements. This is the major construction, the expensive improvements, like adding lanes, building roads, usually the most effective and the most expensive. So next slide. So then on that note, for each alternative that we identified, we had to evaluate it. So we evaluated based on its environmental impact, its transportation impact, the cost, and its impact on the social environment. So for nature and climate, we're looking at things like how it would impact woodlands, wetlands, aquatic features, heritage, and noise. And sometimes this can even just be like during the construction process. And then we, of course, look at the transportation environment. So that's how it's going to impact the road network, the ultimate transportation level of service, safety, connectivity, how well it'll support active transportation. And then the big one, cost, of course. Often the most effective solution is the most expensive, and that is something that we obviously need to take into consideration. And then finally, the social environment. So how those proposed alternatives are going to impact the community, the local businesses, character, etc. All right, so next slide, we can look at what we've landed on. Right, so similar to the last map, but now looking at what we propose to do about the identified problems. So for Union and Cornelia, we're recommending that that intersection is upgraded to a traffic signal and that it's reconfigured a little bit, removing the channelized right turn lane. At Elmsley and Cornelia, we think signal timing upgrades alone should be able to take care of the problems. At Lombard and Abbott, recognizing that that stretch of road is also looking like it's going to be nearing capacity. We recommend monitoring, and if issues do present, westbound left turns can be prohibited, especially during peak hours. And then Beckwith and Montague is one that wasn't actually identified as a problem for operational concerns related to capacity, but it is one with a bit of an odd 5-leg configuration that the town staff flagged to us. So for that one, we're recommending a more thorough intersection control study to assess whether the roads should be aligned differently, if a roundabout would be a good option. It's going to need a little bit more in-depth dive than this study did. And then for adding connectivity, we're proposing new roads in that development area in the southeast. So a new road connecting Lorne to Rideau Regional Road, and then another one off of that connecting the new road to Air Care Drive. And then we've also proposed in there a little Ferreira Road extension connecting it to Lombard. And that will hopefully divert a little bit of the traffic off of Lombard, where we identified the capacity concerns, and just provide better connectivity to that whole southern neighborhood to get to the commercial areas there. And then for active transportation, the vast majority of places that bike lanes were proposed, we are recommending to fit them in, whether that involves narrowing lanes or going into the boulevard space a little bit in areas where it just won't fit. Like I believe on Cornelia and on Brockville, we're recommending that a multi-use path is built. So that's a wider path that combines pedestrian and cycling facilities, but giving lots of room for people to pass so that we can accommodate all modes without eating into too much of the vehicle space. And then finally, on Elmsley, Lombard, and Beckwith, where capacity concerns were proven to be a problem, they were just right on that cusp, really not justifying a road widening or anything like that. So we're recommending that left turns are prohibited anywhere that there's not a left turn lane, just funneling people through the intersections so that they're not creating backups during peak hours should keep vehicles flowing. Yeah, next slide. Right, yeah, so that about wraps up my big summary of the transportation master plan. Of course, you can reach out to the project team if you have any questions that we can't get the answers to today, but hopefully following this, we can get to everyone's questions.
So there's one more presentation, and then we're going to open everything up. Right? No, that's it. Is Rory not doing? No. Okay. Okay. So that's the end of our presentations, I'm told. Okay. So we will now invite the public to comment on the draft. If you have not signed in the sign-in sheet, please do so before leaving the meeting. If you wish to be notified of the decision on the draft, the new official plan or transportation master plan, please include your email and mailing address in the sign-in sheet. Please note that all comments will form a part of the public record, and I'll ask anyone who wishes to make a comment approach the podium one at a time and state their name and address. And a couple notes. Please be advised if a person or public body would like to otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Town of Smith Falls to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Smith Falls before the proposed official plan is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. And also, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Smith Falls before the proposed official plan is adopted, the person or public body may not be added to as a party for the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as party. Just had to read that. So I invite anybody who has questions to come forward and come up and give us your name.
Want to remember the citizen to use the podium?
Well, we don't have to be too formal.
Okay.
Just your name and address. And
my name's Mr. Pete Sefton. I reside at 119 Lawrence Street, Smith Falls. My question is primarily to the transportation study. Obviously, the planning here is done on behalf of Smith Falls, but half of the town is Montague. And the growth in Montague right now appears to be larger than the growth in Smith Falls. And the concerns that I see, or that I would think that the town would be looking at, is we have 2 subways to feed the north end of our town. So even if in the future you're going to expand beyond Lawrence Street or beyond the tracks, we're really hamstrung. And my question was, has anybody looked at the potential of the end of Lawrence Street being used as an expansion into the Montague area?
Thank you for that. And I'll pass that over to whoever wants to take it.
I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything from a transportation master planning perspective, Andrea. The work that Andrea has done is based on information related to traffic counts and what we all understand about Smith Falls proper, and then to the extent that the information is available, we get some of the flow through data.
Yes.
So we've attempted to capture as best as we can, but we recognize it's a bit of an imperfect data set because of all of that other stuff going on.
I would imagine through the study, you've probably noticed that in excess of 50% of the people leave town to go to work.
Yeah.
We have 3 ways basically to get out of town in the north. With the microstorms that we're having now, many days were delegated down to 2 ways. The Matheson Street subway is a disaster. They can't get the kids to school at Montague. And again, I realize that Lawrence Street ends on private property on CP, but it does presently cross the tracks on a level grade. And the fact that you are now expending the money to create Lawrence Street into a collector, leads me to wonder what that collector, in essence, with that kind of money invested, would be doing to be dead-ended, whereby it could give us a third access in and out of town, without having to go out 43 or around or et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, again, I just, obviously the study is for Smiths Falls. Half of our border is right on the township line with the tracks, and those appear to be the bottleneck areas that concern us all on a daily basis.
Anything else to add, Andrea?
Yeah, I would just mention that, like you said, we did look at, this is a Smiths Falls study, but Lanark County is also updating their transportation master plan. So any regional road connectivity and bottlenecks caused there, that's more of a county-wide macro level. So I'm sure it is likely being addressed. That just wasn't really the scope of our study. We were looking at internal connectivity.
Another question I have, when it comes to roadways and infrastructure, as a municipal level, are you working with Bill C-15, which covers expropriation of lands? Or is the intention of this master plan to work with the residents involved that hold the properties to come to a collective agreement?
Maybe I'll attempt to answer that, and then Carl and Andrea, feel free to elaborate. Usually what happens is two scenarios. So in a newly developing area where there's never been previous development, where a municipality has identified in their plan that there's going to be a road, when the developer proposes development, it's under the Planning Act that the municipality is then granted that strip of land for that road to be there. So that's how that mechanism works if we're dealing with a brand new subdivision, for example, in a previously undeveloped area. In an area where you have existing developments and there's a need to widen the road, the first thing that you heard Andrea say is we try to actually optimize what we can do within the space that we have, and then going to like a road widening in an existing context is almost like a means of the last resort, in which case then the municipality has to work with the various existing landowners to take the additional width that it needs in order for the road to get bigger. But like I said, the reason we've done a transportation master plan is to look at optimizing the system that we have and avoid those means of the last resort. And as you heard Andrea say, like there's a lot of optimization that can be done well before we have to look at further types of more invasive work on expanding roads.
My understanding is once this master plan is instituted, which I guess is this fall, it's going to place many properties into a non-conforming status. Are we going to be issued grandfathering for our existing uses pending the, your master plan is obviously 10, 20, 30 years out. I won't be talking about it, but my children and my grandchildren might. And will the existing uses of the properties be protected, or will we automatically be in default and non-conforming once this new master plan changes our zonings and changes our, what we're presently sitting at?
Again, happy to answer that question. And if, Carl, you feel the need to elaborate, by all means, please do. So there's actually two components to your question, and I'll separate them and answer them individually. So I'll use two examples. So for example, if you happen to have owned an existing property, and kind of going back to your earlier circumstance, the municipality needed to widen the road and ended up taking an extra meter off of your front yard, you may have been compliant with the front yard setback for your house at that particular point in time, but now you're not.
Yes.
So now you're legally non-compliant to a front yard setback in the zoning bylaw. You'll find in the zoning bylaw provisions for legally non-compliant development, and so you are grandfathered in as a result of that. So the first answer to that circumstance is yes. The other thing that you'll find in the way that we do planning in Ontario is that even though you may have an existing development, say you've had a house on a property for 3 generations, and a long-term plan might be for the area to be redeveloped over time. Even though there's a new designation in a plan that might say industrial or employment, and even though the zoning may have changed that says industrial or whatever, the fact that you've had a legally established use, you'll also find in the zoning bylaw provisions to respect that as a legally established non-conforming use, and you'll find provisions in the zoning bylaw that give you that grandfathering protection. So the other half of the answer is also yes, there's a grandfathering for that. And basically what happens is at some point in the future, should you decide that you're going to sell the property and someone's going to buy it and then do that future development, then they have the rights to then pursue a development of that kind, right?
Okay.
And so that's how planning works everywhere in Ontario.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those questions. And Marie has been writing furiously here to make sure they're in the record. So, yes, ma'am.
So my name is Karen Lavoie, and I live at 115 Lawrence Street. And I've been there 16 years now. And so I'm going to add on to a question that Pete had. When you said that you're non-conformant after you widen the roadway because now you've moved that line, what does that mean to the size of my property according to my deed, my value of my property? My concern is if I try to sell within the next 2 or 3 years, any real estate person with any gumption is going to advise the potential buyer that this is potential going to be commercial. So we're losing a market to sell my house and therefore affecting the value of my house. Or if it's going to be commercial and somebody's going to buy me out, personally, I'd rather them buy me out sooner than later so I can make life decisions because I literally just retired and then got this news.
Yeah.
So it's becoming real and it's becoming personal. And like one of those roads goes right down one of my neighbor's driveway and the other road goes right across his house.
Yeah.
So where do we stand in what if I want to sell in the next 2 or 3 years? Or are we going to get bought out? And I'd rather it sooner than later.
Sure. Again, pleased to answer. And Carl, if you'd like to elaborate further, you're welcome to. So I recognize the circumstance and I'll explain it to you by offering this overarching perspective. There's a difference between change of land use and a change of ownership. And so those are handled differently in the way we do things in Ontario. So the fact that you have a home that you've lived in for many years and it's a residential use and that's how it is, and you choose to put it on the market and then you change ownership, that ownership and somebody occupies it and continues to use it as a residential, you've simply changed ownership. You have not changed the use of the property as residential, right? So they can continue having, and then they can sell it 15 other more times and it can continue to be residential because that use has always continued to be residential year in, year out, decade after decade. And that's the reality in a lot of places in Ontario. And what happens is that if somebody wants to then come in and say, I'm going to buy the property from you, and in fact, I'm probably going to not have it as a house anymore because their intention is to change the use, then what we do is we open the plan, we look at the zoning, we look at the land use designation, and we have a conversation with that new owner about what that change of use actually means. And if they're going to do something that's aligned with the plan, or if maybe they have a really good idea and it might be different than what we planned, but it's still acceptable. And then we deal with change of use through,
So I'm grandfathered no matter what they do to residents.
So yeah, you're
But then they can build businesses and stuff right up to my property line.
Yeah, so if the other thing that's a fair comment, and I will also say we see this in Ontario, is in the fullness of time, if an area is changing and then there is existing property around it, one of the reasons why we do planning and why we have these public meetings is so that people are aware about what's happening in their community or going to happen in 10 or 20 or 30 years. So indeed, land may go for sale around you, You may still continue to want to live there and have your home, and you're perfectly allowed to do that. Somebody else may buy a property and say, well, the municipality envisions this to be a small, business of some kind, and I'm going to open a business on the property because that's what we're trying to do. And that's customary and normal in Ontario. So I believe I've answered your question, but if you have anything else.
Yes, my question, it doesn't help the decision.
Yeah.
Because you can literally have a big company come in and buy the farm beside me, and they're gonna build right up to my property line. Then how am I gonna sell my house as a residential?
If anything, though, Karen, it'll probably enhance your property values.
Would you buy a house when you got a big business?
When you want to sell, call me.
I will.
Absolutely.
Carl's got something to add here.
Anything else, Carl?
Yeah, so I'm just going to build on what Rory was talking about as it relates to the road placement. So the exercise, the official plan exercise right now is very high level. So we've had a land need study that's identified that we need more residential land, more industrial land, and based on a variety of planning criteria, has identified that these are the locations where those are best suited based on proximity to existing businesses, transportation, and so on. So I think the plan has identified that in order to best serve these new employment areas or these new residential areas, we're going to need new roads to go in there. So it's not, as it relates to the new roads, it's not intended to read as precise. So we can't, we haven't been scaling off and stating that this new road is going to go exactly at this location or that location, but it's just to give a roadmap that if these areas are going to develop as intended, they're probably going to need new roads. And typically those new roads are, as Rory had indicated, developed through a planning process. So let's say if somebody is looking to sell and develop 30 acres of industrial land through a subdivision, then through that planning process, they identify where the road is, and there's a lot more detailed design that goes into the location of the planning, if it's going to go on this side of the hydro corridor or that side of the hydro corridor, and so on. So at this point, we're not looking to sort of forecast an exact and precise location of a new road, but just the general idea that this is probably going to need to happen at some point in order to fully support the intended long-term land use.
Yeah, thank you, Carl, because I believe you'd inquired about the road and I had not touched on that, so I appreciate you covering that subject. Thank you, Carl.
Okay, thank you for that question. Yes, sir?
Yeah.
You could just speak up there. You're fine.
My name is Matty Deborah. I'm 2 McEwen Avenue. My question is, looking through the transportation master plan, I didn't see the word accessible. And I'm wondering if there was any accessibility lens put on our existing active roads network and the challenges that many of us have using it.
I'm going to throw that to Andrea because she is our resident transportation expert. So Andrea, would you like to comment on our perspective on accessibility and why that's very important to us?
Yes, I couldn't hear all of the question. If you're able to repeat
Maybe I'll reiterate, and then please correct me if I recap it poorly. A member of the community was asking about accessibility and how that's been factored into the concepts of the transportation master plan.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of that comes in the active transportation design. We have safety standards and minimums for a reason. That's also a lot of the benefit of the multi-use paths we've proposed, and generally trying to separate active transportation from vehicle corridors as much as possible, providing buffered bike lanes or like curb separation to make things safer for the most vulnerable users. The more we can keep pedestrian and cycling facilities away from vehicles, naturally the safer it is. And then again, having more active transportation facilities and connectivity that way removes the need for, improves the ability for people who aren't able to use cars to get around the community. And then we do also have a recommendation, I believe it's actually within the OP, to consider a transit feasibility study. If the demand exists, that's another layer of adding accessible transportation options for the more vulnerable community members.
there are no accessible transportation right now. So the one of the questions I have really is, I'm not sure, how many folks with mobility challenges in particular have part of this process. But there's a lot of intersections in the Smith Falls that are just unsafe to be in a wheelchair, and to navigate around requires having to go way under your way sometimes to get to a point where we have a light system that is car first, pedestrian maybe, and if the lights assume walk when it's green, and only start flashing when it's about to turn yellow, so you get more time, because right now if you actually obeyed those damn things, you'd almost never get across the street, because the many buttons don't actually turn it into a walk. You sometimes miss cycles. Chambers and Beckwith is probably the most dangerous intersection in all of Sioux Falls. There's sidewalks that don't connect neighborhoods. Like, how do you get to the train station? In a winter, you're on the road. So I'm just wondering if a lens had sought out folks who have, like, it's a very different. We use the same network, but have a very different mode of travel. Curb cuts being able to be used in the wintertime. Not all curb cuts are possible. So there's some places we just can't get on the sidewalk. So a lot of people that use wheelchairs do not use the system much. They certainly don't use it in the wintertime.
So maybe I'll provide some assistance on this one. One of the things that we benefit from by taking the transportation master planning exercise and doing it in conjunction with the official plan is that things that set the tone for the future development and shaping of the community and policy live in the official plan. And so where the transportation master plan saw opportunities to make things better from a kind of policy-led perspective, that materialized in the official plan. So like we enhanced the section around accessibility, very much in the spirit of the things that you're describing. So now this version of the official plan sets a much stronger direction in terms of making the community accessible for everybody. And that's like an extremely important step forward. So now what we need is the community to grow and evolve in accordance with the policy on from the official plan perspective, and then implement those with construction in accordance with the AODA legislation in Ontario, which has a whole bunch of standards that didn't previously exist before in terms of accessible design for trails, roads, sidewalks. And so as the community evolves, and as, for example, some of the new changes identified in the TMP actually get constructed, they will begin to incorporate those accessibility improvements, and we will begin to get those changes on the ground. I would love to flip a switch and make them all happen tomorrow, but I know we just need some time to implement them. I do believe firmly that we've got the right pieces in place, and now the next few years are about getting those works in place.
As it happens, we have our Director of Public Works here, and he's got his hands up.
Oh, and there's Paul.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I just wanted to augment what Rory was saying there. So I picked up on some of your comments, and I will say that over the last number of years, we haven't been making, AODA improvements around town with curb cuts on some of our existing streets, particularly on the north side of the Rideau, up in residential areas. We've done quite a few full reconstruction projects. I can think of a few being Catherine, phase 1 and phase 2 of George Street, where we put in AODA compliant curb cuts with the tactile walking service indicators at those intersections for folks that have vision impairment, etc. But to touch on your comment about going out Union Street from Cornelia, making your way out to the VIA station, that's actually one of the projects that we're doing under our asphalt concrete milling and paving contract this year. It's called our ACMP. You may have heard me talk about it at budget time. So we're actually putting a sidewalk on the, I guess it would be the west side of Union Street from Cornelia, going out past the pizza place there on the corner, all the way out to where we integrate to the asphalt sidewalk that then leads out to the VIA station. So all that to say, we are very cognizant of the active transportation plan that was implemented a couple of years back, and we're picking away at those improvements. Understanding we can't wave our wand, we have limited funds, but I will say that council's been very affording over the last number of years with providing those capital dollars to make those improvements around town, and we'll continue to do so under council's direction. So I think we're making leaps and bounds in terms of improvements around town, understanding that we can't do it all at one time, but we do pick away at those concepts that have been developed in the active transportation plan. We put a number of PXOs in around town. We have a number that more, I think 5 that we're proposing for the 2027 budget around town as well.
But we're
Pedestrian crossovers.
PXO. Change the light of those to be red, not yellow, because cars do not think they need to do anything about it.
They are at this point because we wouldn't be compliant with the Highway Traffic Act. We wouldn't be compliant with the Ontario Traffic Manual, but so we're making those improvements as well. So this all does integrate with the OP and with the Transportation Master Plan. The Active Transportation Plan is very integral to that, and we are cognizant of it, as is council as well. So I just wanted to make those notes because I picked up on a few points.
Thanks.
Do you guys put out an annual, like here's what we're going to work on this year to improve accessibility?
So through the chair, it is, so we do present that at council, particularly when I come to council with an award of the contract, I will note all the different locations that we're going to be implementing changes, whether it be what I like to call a shade and pave, so we go on mill and we pave. We're doing a bunch of work this year over on Percy Street by the schools. We're making improvements all the way from Pearl up down to Broadview. New asphalt, improvements to the sidewalk, notably on the radiuses for accessibility features. We're going to be implementing a couple of speed humps down there closer to the school for speed mitigation, those types of things. So more so often than not, we do present that information when we come to council for awards. So it is out there in the public realm for sure.
Yeah, I just thank you for that, and I think we're close to $1 million in road work this year. And in my time, there's so many new sidewalks in town. I'd point to Vincent Street, Broadview Avenue, Lombard on the one side, all the way up towards past McDonald's, that type of thing. And so I think there's around 60 kilometers of roads, streets in town. So as Director Ruckman says, everyone on council certainly is in support of picking away at them as quick as possible, given the other stuff that we have to do. But
notably, just to augment what Councillor Brennan was saying, we do look at areas of town where we're void of any sidewalks. One area which would be an arterial would be along Lombard Street. So we put in sidewalks there 2 years or so ago from the intersection of Brockville back with Lombard, Jasper, that intersection on the north side, all the way down to all the entrance into the park on the north side of Lombard. There was no sidewalk there before, so we put a sidewalk in on the back side of curb. So we do kind of focus on that at areas. We try to integrate some of that into our plan on a capital basis or on an annual basis as well. There's still a lot of work to do, notably on the south side of town, east of Brockville Street. There's a whole residential area up in there that are void of sidewalks. But again, it takes significant capital dollars to make those improvements, and we'll take our cues from council if that's an area that they want to focus on. But I'm just noting that there's quite a number of areas around town that need some focused attention on sidewalk improvements and accessibility improvements as well.
Thanks for that. Thank you for that question, and your comments have been noted, rest assured. Mr. Canning, you have a question? Your name and address, please.
Chris Canning, 18R2 Lombardy, Ontario. How is the official plan update addressing climate resiliency?
Cadence, you want to handle that one? So you're pretty close to the thrusts of the official plan and the directions we're taking.
I'm just going to navigate to the correct part of the plan so I can. And sorry, is it just climate resiliency generally throughout the plan, or?
Yeah, how is it addressing climate resiliency?
Mhm.
How are you improving walkability downtown? And how is it addressing the transportation clogs, you have from up Lombard Street from Abbott Street? How is that being addressed? Thank you.
Andrea, there was a part of the question that was about the transportation at Lombard and Abbott. So we'll let Cadence do the first two pieces of the question, and then we'll throw it to you for part three, okay? Thanks.
Yeah. So touching on the climate piece, as I mentioned earlier, part of so Smiths Falls is in the process of developing its climate action plan as part of its membership in the FCM, so the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Network. That's something, Carl, I do know when it's in the past couple of years that Smiths Falls has become a member of that.
Yes, we've become.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, we've become a member in a couple of years ago, but it was actually this past summer where council adopted the climate action plan that includes about a couple of dozen specific and actionable recommendations that can be carried forward over the coming years to achieve the GHG reduction targets that council had set earlier this term.
And so part of the climate piece of the official plan is enabling the adoption of those recommendations put forward in the action plan through official plan policy. So I mentioned a few of the things earlier to do with improved stormwater management, things like green roofs and controlling runoff and that sort of thing in that realm of addressing climate. You were also talking about active transportation, which some of that is touched in the transportation master plan, but also looking to improve that active network as a whole throughout the transportation policies in the OP is put forward as a recommendation, and basically wanting to create through some of those bike network recommendations that Andrea was talking about, just improved options to get around without a personal vehicle would be one of the large pieces of the climate resiliency element. Yeah, I can speak to, is there anything more you'd like?
I think it was touching on the Lombard Street, Abbott Street.
Yeah, so that might be the.
And I came in late, I'm sorry.
No
problem.
No.
Andrea, off to you.
Yeah, for sure. So the question was just what is the proposed solution for the congestion at Lombard and Abbott?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so the main solution that we had proposed was at the intersection of Lombard and Abbott, prohibiting westbound left turns during the peak hour. If we can keep the intersections flowing, the road network flows. So if we can focus on intersection level improvements, that should have an impact. And then that is a segment where we recognize there's no room to lose vehicle space. So in implementing the active transportation facility along there, it's recommended to cut into the boulevard space or retain. I don't believe that land acquisition is actually required. I think we just had to cut into the boulevard space to fit the cycle lanes in so that we don't lose any vehicle capacity. But generally, we do just recommend monitoring, and even things like making Brockville a collector and improving that road is going to have traffic flowing ways other than on Lombard. Same with adding the Ferrara Drive extension that diverts vehicles away. So we've implemented a lot of small solutions to stay away from a big widening.
And I will maybe just quickly add back on the climate resiliency piece. I would think just kind of throughout the whole plan, when you're looking at things like, so at the beginning I was talking about some of the changes proposed in housing policy and allowing different typologies of housing, where that is one way to become more climate resilient in terms of having slightly denser development, infill development, that sort of thing. So there are the specifics I was talking about in terms of maybe green roofs, green energy, but also just in kind of the whole approach. And when you, I would say intensification and looking at housing kind of allows you to address climate, not just, in its lane, so to speak, but kind of at the broader level.
Carl?
And to build on what Cadence stated as well, and one of the things that our department through development approvals and public works department have been working on and supported by the direction of the official plan is really that stormwater management piece. And we recognize that there are combined sewers in town, there are storm sewers in town, there are parts of the town that have no storm sewers at all. So as best as possible through the development review and as being guided by the new policies, the official plan, we're looking at sort of low impact development and other sort of retention practices on the site to, as best as possible, retain stormwater. We've certainly seen over the course of the summer where there's been some pretty significant rain events where any system has struggled to manage that huge amount of water in a short period of time. And that's certainly something that we've identified as a best practice. We're trying to be more resilient in that way through managing more of the stormwater on site. We're putting less impact on municipal infrastructure, hopefully resulting in less and potential cleaner water being sort of managed through the system. So I wanted to mention briefly what we're working on through the development review process that this official plan is sort of guiding and supporting us on.
Okay, thank you for that. Does that answer your question, Chris? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the public? Okay, seeing. Oh yes, one more. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Right now on Lauren, they're putting a temporary water line right down part of the street.
Right.
The water sewer construction plant project, because the new water tower is literally in my backyard. Okay, so they're putting a new water line down there. Are they doing that because this plan is pretty much in concrete and they're going to be doing it all the way down? Our concern is we have a well with lots of water, good water, and I don't want town water and a bill.
Well, the director, the expert here, Director McClung.
Yeah, so you're talking about the trunk main and sewer separation project that we're
they've literally got the street dug up right.
Yeah, so this phase of the project, we're working from Rideau Avenue South down to Lawrence Street at the easement that goes behind Tweed's bottling plant, and then runs up to the tower. So a number of years ago, right around the time I started here in 2021, there was a municipal class EA environmental assessment completed for the to try to determine the best location for the new water tower, understanding that our existing water tower that still stands over in Centennial Park is undersized and it doesn't meet the capacity requirements for, I would argue even for today, let alone future growth for 25, 30 year projections down the road that we're speaking about through this OP practice that we're doing right now. So part and parcel to the location of the water tower, part of that EA process also determined how best do we get water from the water treatment plant over on Abbott Street to that location. So we currently have a 16-inch trunk water main that routes from the water plant down Chambers Street, and we're going to pick up with that out at Empress at Chambers. So we're going to go down Empress to King over to Rideau down to Lorne to the easement, then to the water tower. And then we have a secondary feed that goes from the water tower and goes out Walker Road, which is somewhat of a non-open road allowance for a portion of it, goes out to Queen Street. So we have that loop. So that's what that project's.
They're not doing it past the ATV trail to the water tower. They're just doing it down there.
No, not currently. We have provisions in the plan to, so there'd be a T connection there where it comes off of Lauren and goes down the easement for future growth to potentially go down Lawrence Street down the road. We're not plumbing anything in right now other than we're putting in a short stub and a valve for the future, right? If and or when that time comes. That make sense?
Yeah, so.
So the overland
When it
pipe,
does, if and when it does go down all the way to the tracks past my house, literally our house, then would we have an option of tapping into the water or not?
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a not. And I went through this, I used to live in Hammond, and we were brought town water, which at that point was better than the well we had, but we're given town water and sewers, but we took the sewers and not the water because we had a well that time. So you don't have to tap into both.
I'd have to refer back to the water use
This is
bylaw.
just
There may
water
be
right now,
provisions
not
in there.
sewers coming
Yeah,
out.
it could be a case of if and don't quote me on this, but if you had ever had issues with your well,
Yeah.
then you would have the ability to
Right.
tap to tie into the
Right.
municipal water system, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not sewer is extended down there anytime soon. I mean, right now we have provisions that we can extend the sewer because there's a manhole right there at that easement as well.
Yeah.
So we could get gravity sewer projecting out Lawrence Street, out towards the tracks. But again, that's a lot of hypothetical there,
Yeah.
whether or not there ever was any development out that way. But we're staged to accommodate that down the road should the time come. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for being here. Okay, seeing no other questions, I want to thank everyone for coming and participating in the public meeting tonight for the presentation of the draft new official plan and transportation master plan. I want to thank town staff for their work and our partners at Dillon as well. This has been a bit of a process, as it should be. And as a councillor, I look forward to this coming to council. So thank you, Carl and Rory and your teams for all your work. The next step is to make revisions and then present the draft to council. Following a decision of council to adopt the official plan, the plan will be submitted to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for approval. So I'll conclude the public meeting at 6:10. And thank everybody for coming, and have a donut on your way out. Thanks, everybody.